Continuing on with our discussion of the humanities, we need to look first at urbanization. This is one thing that came about in Victorian England that has an impact, and we're going to see how it grows up as well. Because this impacts the Charles Dickens character as well as others we're going to see. So when we talk about the urbanization during London's Gilded Age, we really talk about a couple of things. Megalopolis, that London goes from being a much smaller town into a massive town. Mass transit, they start building the London Underground, the subway system that would then go out into the suburbs. Brought in economic, social opportunities. There's now became more and more pronounced social class distinctions. It did offer women new opportunities because new jobs opened. We're going to look at those. But for most people, it's squalid living conditions. Political machines, in other words, different groups of politicians were able to control a lot. And then we see the rise of the ethnic neighborhoods that London is still known for. So how do we see the city as a new frontier? First, you can make a new start in the city. So people who lived in other small towns around it could move to London and start a new life. Completely, somewhat erase who they were before, although they're still going to have the social distinctions. Obviously, if you're not wealthy and you live outside London, you move to London, you're not suddenly going to be wealthy. And your accent gives you away, and England is much more concerned about class distinctions than we are in the U.S. But, for example, your accent, people say in England that within 5 seconds they can really tell where you're from, what level of education you've received, because of the way you speak. And so you were able to get a new start and possibly make money where you wouldn't have been able to elsewhere. But it's not going to be a completely new start. We have new symbols of change and progress. We now see the rise of industry. We see the rise of the subway. So this is an important aspect we're going to talk about. New architectural styles grew up. So this was when you look at the city of London, you see lots of different styles mixed into one because the city has grown up organically since, I think, it was around, well, even when Caesar got there, it already had been there. We have Stonehenge, we have things from hundreds of years BC. But London then came into its own really with the Romans who settled there, and then we start seeing, just different styles come on it. And so you will get churches that are built in the 1500s of stone, which survived the Great Fire, in one style next to a church in a completely different style, etc. And London is still known for its architectural style. They build lots of different kinds of buildings. When you go to the city of London, we'll see it in one picture in a bit. You see new and different and odd-looking buildings all next to each other because they don't feel like they just need to be these square 50-story skyscrapers. New use of space. We start seeing green space versus urban space, church space versus political space, etc. So literally the city is broken up into different areas and how they make use of the city. New class diversity, because in the past where you just kind of had the rich and the poor, we now definitely have a middle class, and then within the middle class you have people who are able to earn more, who kind of see themselves as the aristocracy, but since they weren't born into it, just being the upper crust of wealthy society is the best they can do, versus someone who is not in poverty any longer, but is definitely not putting away hundreds of thousands of savings every year. So there's a wide variety that comes into the city based on the different levels of jobs that become available. New and different kinds of energy usually come about based on, actually sources of energy like electricity, nuclear fusion, because we're not talking about London specifically with that, but overall when we look at the idea of a city, usually this is one thing that comes out of it. New cultures mix. London becomes a very international city because of the empire. Since Britain had a huge empire, everyone was considered a citizen. So if you were in India, you could move back, or you could move to England because you were still a citizen. If you were in Australia, you could move to England. If you were in Canada, you could go to England. If you were in parts of Africa that they controlled. So you have different cultures mixing in the city of London because they could all come legally. And because of society changing so much in a very short period of time, we have this new idea of rugged individualism, that once you get to the city, when you're out in the village, in a small town, everyone is individuals because there's maybe only 50, 100, 200 people in a village. When you get to London and there's now, 2 million people or more, then you're just one of a whole mass of people who kind of look and act alike because you're all doing the same jobs, etc. And so here it was definitely a new idea of how to make yourself stand out of the crowd. But also with the negative comes a new level of crime, violence, and corruption. And what does the future hold? Who knows? We're going to see how things develop. Doctor Who has some ideas about where things will go, and we've already seen that in a couple of episodes. But we'll see how the city develops. Now we're going to start with city growth in the next one.